This week on the Dawg Show, we'll preview the Kentucky Wildcats versus the Georgia Bulldogs. So grab you a cold beverage and let's go. So this week, we've got the Kentucky Wildcats traveling to Athens between the hedges to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. We've got a 7 o'clock game. This is going to be on ESPN. It's going to be about 70 degrees at kickoff. Should be perfect weather for some Georgia football. But those Kentucky Wildcats are on a high right now after a big win over Florida Gators. Georgia is favored by 14.5 points, and the over and under is 47.5. I'll tell you, boys, I was a nervous wreck. That was an eye-opener, I think. I don't think Georgia was ready for the running attack that Auburn had with their quarterback. Traditionally, he's not a big threat to run. I think they were caught off guard. I was a little nervous in that game. I think a lot of people were.
Well, I mean, Jeff knows more about it as an Auburn fan, but how does Georgia's defense prepare for an Auburn offense that they've never seen, right? Well, I mean, they've seen it before with Gus, right? But as far as this year with under in the Hugh Freeze era, Hugh Freeze up until that game had not been calling the plays, and his bread and butter, the RPO, they had ran how many in the previous weeks? One. And they came into that game, and the entire first half was RPO. So Georgia's defense, I think Kirby had to make some adjustments, and they just weren't ready. And it's hard to play at Auburn.
Yeah, and Auburn, I mean, that was their season, really. I mean, that until they go to the Iron Bowl.
Yeah.
You know, say what you want to about just the way that the season's been for Auburn. They played hard Saturday night, though. They played hard. They got after it. Peyton Thorne, he's still, he's nothing to write home about, but Coach Freeze is, he's making progress over there, and it's like we talked about the week before. After the game they played against A&M, you could see it in his face. It was killing him not calling plays. He had trusted Philip Montgomery to come over, the old Tulsa head coach, and Art Briles' disciple. Kind of spoke the same language that Hugh Freeze did. So and Hugh, I guess Hugh had told the AD when he got hired that, hey, I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna try to get a hold of the whole program, step away from play calling. But he just couldn't take it anymore. When we didn't score a touchdown, the offense did not score a touchdown against Texas A&M. We kicked a field goal. The defense scored a touchdown.
Yeah, it's unbelievable because their defense is not that fantastic.
No, Eugene Asante, big number 9. He showed out again the other night. If it wasn't for him, even in the A&M game, it would have been worse than it was. So they're beat up in the back. Our linebackers are, they're just coming together. So it's going to be a long year for Auburn, but all in all, Georgia, they did what they had to do. They got the big road win. Carson Beck's first ever, start on the road. The kid was phenomenal. I mean, he played his ass off, 313 yards, 1 touchdown. He did throw that 1 pick, but that was whatever. But, he averaged almost, 9.5 yards a pass. So, and it's a shame for Brock Bowers that he's a tight end, that he won't get any Heisman love, but he's playing as good, if not better than. I mean, listen, Caleb Williams is one thing, okay? That's a whole different animal. But Brock Bowers, as far as a position player, is playing as good as anybody else playing a position. I mean, he's a one-man show.
He is, and the proof was in the pudding. I mean, they haven't used Brock the way people wanted them to in these early games with Ball State.
Yeah.
These games that were give-me games for Georgia, where they were trying to rotate guys in. Give the young guys some reps, but we get into a tough game away, game's close, we need big plays, hostile environment. What happens? Play after play. Yep. Brock Bowers. Hey, you go to the guy that's going to get it done for you. And Georgia made it very clear that to the rest of the world, if they already didn't know, obviously, that hey, this is our guy, and he's just better than you are.
Yeah.
I mean, there was actually a contested throw in the end zone that he should have. I think that he goes back and watches film and beats himself up on. But that was an unusual miss. I mean, he's our go-to guy, and everybody knows it. Now, I do like to see Dejon Edwards get wound up, but that Auburn front played hard. Yeah. Their defensive line was a little more physical than we expected, and Georgia barely squeaked out 100 yards rushing. Ended up with the game with 107 as a team. But I'm telling you, Dylan Bell, that guy impresses me more and more. He only got 4 carries against Auburn, averaged 6.3 yards a carry. He got 25 yards on those 4 carries. That guy is a player. And I know that Dejon Edwards, they're leaning on him because of all the injuries we've had at running back. But, man, get Dylan Bell Bell in there and get him the ball.
Yeah,
he
can make something happen.
That guy is special with the ball in his hand. And I wish that they would find more ways, creative ways to get the ball in that guy's hand. If he's putting up that production in the backfield, then if they can get the ball to him in open space and find ways to get it to him in open space to give Brock Bowers a little bit of a break, that'd be fantastic.
That's on Coach Bobo, man.
But, it is. And he did go to him twice in the air. He had a couple receptions, 14 yards. But Brock ended the game with 8 receptions, 157 yards. He averaged almost 20 yards of reception with a touchdown. So, just unbelievable performance.
He should have
had two. Yeah. One more catch. He should have had one more catch and another touchdown. So
we also was able to see Ladd McConkey dress out. This is the first time he's played all season. He had 4 passes for 38 yards. So hopefully, as he's feeling more healthy, that'll take some of this leverage off of Bowers as well.
He's one of those sneaky guys that just always seems to find a way to get open. So I hope that back felt good after this game, and he got some positive feedback from the medical staff, and that he's ready to rock and roll, because we're going to need him. This Kentucky front, last week, the way they dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball with Florida, just absolutely just manhandled Florida and flat out bullied them. Just bullied them like old school kids on a playground, man. Just bullied them around. And if they can hold the line the way they did against Florida, against that Georgia offensive line, which, I don't think they can quite as effectively, but they will have some success on that defensive line in the run stop. And we're going to have to do a little more play action and hit those receivers. And I hope Ladd plays a big part of that.
Yeah. Georgia's got to shore up whatever they had going on with the Auburn rush for 219 yards. Peyton Thorne had a 61-yard run. That's amazing.
Well, that's like Bo. Well, you take that out of there though, and how many yards do they have? 150.
Yeah,
but it's still more than we had.
159. Yeah.
It goes back to what I was saying. They did not prepare for that RPO.
Yeah.
They had guys flying in all the wrong directions, chasing the ball in directions it wasn't going. So if Kirby had prepared, if they had ran that RPO against Texas A&M, and he had watched them in that game and been ready for it, I think that it would have been a blowout. I think we'd have had a 35-7 game.
And see, that's kind of the reason why I'm leaning on Georgia in this spot, because Kentucky ain't running no RPO.
Yeah, and they're not going to change their offense.
No, they can't change it. They are what they are. Devin Leary's going to do the best he can possibly do. He threw for 69 yards last week against Florida.
But they are averaging 225 yards a game.
But that's Eastern Michigan, Akron, Ball State.
I don't want to take anything away from Kentucky and Devin Leary, but I wouldn't throw the ball either if my guy was averaging 10 yards a carry.
The other thing, the other thing is both their receivers went out in the second half during the Florida game. So they were asking Mark Stoops at the end of the game about his banged up receivers getting ready for Georgia, and he said no comment at this time. And I was looking to see if there was an injury report. There's nothing updated yet, though.
Okay.
On the year now, that puts Carson Beck at almost 1,500 yards. 1497 with 7 touchdowns, 2 picks.
He's averaging almost 300 yards a game as a Georgia quarterback. You know how many quarterbacks in Georgia history have averaged 300 yards a game?
Aaron Murray.
I don't think any.
No, maybe none. I know Eric Zaire was 30-some-odd years ago, but I'm sure he wasn't throwing for 300 yards a game back then in the 90s.
He threw a 78-yard touchdown pass in my face when they beat us 72-0 one time. But that was at Marietta High School.
Yeah. You got your running backs, I don't know if Kendall's coming back or not. At this point, get him healthy. You got Edwards, you got Bell, you still got Robinson. Get him healthy.
We haven't seen Robinson at all.
No. He played early in the year.
Yeah.
And it's
the new Robinson,
Roderick. Yeah.
So we haven't seen him at all in the last couple of games. I don't know if he went down with an injury. I haven't seen anything in the press conferences with Kirby or nothing.
I'm looking at the injury report for today, and he's still listed as doubtful.
Okay. That might be that ankle. Is that what it says on there?
Yep, ankle doubtful.
Yeah.
Javon Buller, they still have him questionable. Ladd McConkey still in here questionable. Kendall Milton for knee, he's also questionable. Yeah, this doesn't look like – that's one big thing.
Is that this week's injury report?
The one I'm looking at is from September 25th. So I don't.
That's weird because Ladd came out and played, and Bullard
this says 6 hours ago.
Wow, Bullard had 10 tackles last week. If Bullard hadn't played, we might not have won the game.
Oh, that's true. He was all over the field.
He was everywhere.
The key thing about that game with Auburn is we had no serious injuries. Yeah. And so the injury report, I think they're just still being cautious.
Yeah.
Just your pride got injured. That's all. If you're
on the
defense.
It did.
It did.
Big kick in the nuts.
And it should have gave you a little something to cheer about. Should have gave you a little something to be like, you know what? We're going to get this shit together.
Yeah. Well, long road to hold, buddy.
All right, what do we got favored? Georgia by 14.5. Is that the final line right now?
14.5 and 47.
47.
You know, I'm leaning Georgia 38-20 in this game. Like I said, I believe they will definitely make Devin Leary one-dimensional, and they'll key on Ray Davis. And I think Kirby's going to make the necessary adjustments. And like Chris alluded to, there's no RPO in this Kentucky offense. So, and if Devin Leary, if they think they're going to beat Georgia with Devin Leary running the ball, yeah, Mark Stoops ain't going to do that. So I think it's going to be a big game for Georgia. Get them back on track. Like I said, that win last week I think it's going to do huge things for Carson Beck and the team itself. You know, that kid went out there to that hostile environment, and he really took the game over in the second half with him and his main man, Brock Bowers.
In the press conference today, Kirby compared Ray Davis to DeAndre Swift and said actually he's a little bigger than Swift is, but he's very much the same type of running back. Very hard running back, very downhill, a one-cut type of back, makes that one hard cut and gets into it. And I thought if I were a running back in Division I football and somebody compared me to DeAndre Swift, I'd feel pretty good about it. So, all right, what do we let's talk about real quick before we get into any picks that y'all want to do for this game. Here's where I'm having a problem with this game. It's so hard. Kentucky's 5-0, and they beat Florida, and they beat them 33-14. And it was such a convincing win that are we wanting to give Kentucky too much credit? Because Florida has been up and down. They played Utah, which has been terrible. They beat Vanderbilt, Akron, Eastern Kentucky, and Ball State. Mm-hmm. So where do we really validate Kentucky's success?
Well, I mean, look, so the Ray Davis, he rushed for 112 yards against Ball State, 52 against Eastern Kentucky, 72 against Akron, 78 against Vandy. And he went off last week. I looked at last year. You know, he transferred out of Vandy last year. When they played Georgia last year, Georgia beat Vandy 55-0. Ray Davis had 12 carries for 29 yards. So Kirby knows what's going on.
Right.
You know, he knows what's going on.
He's no new guy. Ray Davis is not a new guy on the block that everybody's like, oh my gosh, their running back is so good. But I mean, what made him good is that, like we just said, Kentucky just dominated Florida up front.
They did.
I mean, they just abused them.
And I don't see Kentucky's defensive line dominating y'all's offensive line either. I mean, Auburn, it was all they could do to get after Carson. I mean, and we're nothing spectacular, but I would say they're about on par with Kentucky. Defensive line, you know.
I'm worried about, and I think you're right. I think Georgia's offensive line is doing a great job in pass protection this year. I think that we're struggling in run blocking, or the blocking schemes just aren't working out for the type of guys we got.
Well, it'd be maybe they'll try to hit the edges on them.
Who knows, man? But I never bet on Georgia, and I went ahead and picked them this week to not cover because they don't ever cover. And I figured if I can pick them not to cover, then they'll finally cover. And I'll take the loss on my record this week to see them do something.
Yeah, I think Kentucky puts up maybe 10 points, and then Georgia, I don't think they're going to cover. So I'm at 24-10.
I think we scored more than 24. I think we just give up more.
I hope we do.
Yeah.
I'd love to be wrong in it. It's not going to hurt my stats for the season.
That's right. Oh, shit.
I took them. I laid to 14.5, so I think Georgia goes 6-0 with Vandy on deck.
All right, guys. Well, that's our show for the week. We really appreciate you tuning in. Please remember to subscribe and to like. And go Dogs.